Tonight, major developments in the Refuge takeover in eastern Oregon. Shots fired as the feds move in, arresting militia leaders. And Coin 6 giving you an exclusive look of the scene where it all went down.
We have a subject with gunshot wound. Law enforcement is on scene.
One of those militants is dead tonight, as we've confirmed outspoken leader Lavoy Finicum was killed.
All this playing out in a remote area as the group traveled to a meeting that went on as scheduled without the militant leaders. And at 11 o'clock, good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Gianola.
And I'm Jennifer Hoff. Here is what we know tonight. Militia leader Bundy is under arrest, as well as his brother, Ryan. We also know Ryan was shot in the arm. Police also arrested Brian Cavalier, Shauna Cox, and Ryan Payne with the militant group. Another militant, John Ritzheimer, was taken into custody in Arizona. Then in a separate event in Burns, Joseph O'Shaughnessy and Peter Santilli were also arrested. The Harney District Hospital was on lockdown, but we found out late tonight that officers have since left the building. But Highway 395 between Burns and John Day, a 50-mile stretch, is still blocked tonight. And Coin 6 News was the only station on the scene as federal agents and other officers shut down that major highway where this confrontation took place.
I want you to look at this exclusive video now from our photojournalist Dale Burkholz. He was on his way to cover that community meeting in John Day between militia leader Bundy and people who live there. And Dale described to me what happened.
There were at least 3 or 4 federal cars. They looked like federal agents. They were behind the cars, guns drawn. And it looked like, I couldn't tell, but it looked like whatever it was over. It just happened. And so I pulled over and took some video with my cell phone because I knew they'd be nervous if I got out, obviously. The situation was still developing. And shot some video with that. And then as I did that, a car pulled up behind me. He wasn't in any hurry, but then I saw him get out with a military-style rifle, and he came up, knocked on the window, and very abruptly told me to turn around and head south, which I immediately did.
Now, something else very interesting. Dale tells us that area where the confrontation took place has no cell phone service because of a steep canyon. So did federal authorities plan it that way? We don't know.
That's a question we're certainly looking into. We also found out that community meeting that Dale was going to, it went on as scheduled at the John Day Senior Center. And I spoke to a resident who described what happened at that meeting when news of this gunfight broke.
When did you get word that something had happened?
Not too long into the meeting, we were there, and it was crowded. It was a very packed room. Very crowded room, packed in like sardines. And that's, not long after the people were getting ready to start, word came down, and there was kind of an odd feeling in the room. You could feel the tension and stuff because, it's coming across different social media and such. So no one's knowing exactly what's going on other than something's happening. It just kind of got tense, depending on which side of the fence you're on with them, happy, sad, or indifferent. It just depends there. But you could definitely feel something change in the air.
Did a law enforcement official come in and confirm anything?
Negative. We did have a law enforcement, our own sheriff shows up, and apparently came there to either welcome them or whatever. He went to the front of the room where they were at. And not long after he stepped out a side door or something, a friend of mine told me that he was speaking with militia as that was all going down. Information was coming in. He went out and, according to my friend that spoke with him, and that he left.
And Mike says that meeting lasted for 2 hours. It went on as scheduled, and several people there spoke. A militia supporter and several of her children also started singing.
The militia member who was killed tonight in that confrontation with federal agents had become a familiar face during the occupation of the Refuge. Lavoy Finicum was a spokesperson for the group. He was known for being soft-spoken but determined. He often wore those fur earmuffs along with his cowboy hat with a revolver on his hip. Here is Finicum speaking with Coin 6 just a few weeks ago.
If I'm not worried then, why should I start worrying now?
Nothing to lose?
No, all to gain. All to gain. It's not about losing, it's about gaining. It's about putting the federal government back into the confines of the law.
Once again, Finicum dead tonight. He was from Arizona but had traveled to Oregon to take part in the occupation.
Cliven Bundy is weighing in on Finicum's death. The Nevada rancher is Ammon and Ryan Bundy's father, who has been an outspoken leader in the anti-government movement. He says he heard from Ammon just moments after his arrest. And then here's what he heard from his son.
Ryan Bundy had been shot in the arm. Lavoy Finicum had been murdered, cold-bloodedly murdered. Said that he had had his hands in the air, said he wasn't armed, and they shot him.
Again, that's Cliven Bundy, related to Ammon Bundy. Also late tonight, we spoke with leaders of the Pacific Patriot Network who tell us they spoke with the FBI and was told there would be no FBI presence at the wildlife refuge and that anybody else who was left at the refuge was free to go home. Now, this occupation at the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge has been going on now for a while, for 3.5 weeks. It started earlier this month in what began as a rally in support for two men, Dwight and Stephen Hammond.
Yeah, the father and son ranchers were sent back to federal prison for starting fires that spread to federal lands. And our Cole Miller now with a closer look at how we got here exactly, Cole.
Well, Jennifer, Jeff, there were pleas for this militia to leave and leave peacefully. Within the first week this standoff started. I spent time there. I spoke with the community, and Coin 6 has been following this story from the very beginning.
How long will you stay?
As long as it's necessary.
That was night one at the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge for Ammon Bundy and his men, protesting the arrest of local ranchers Stephen and Dwight Hammond.
But it's not about me. It's about America. And somehow we got to get the wheels back on this wagon because they're flying off.
The Hammonds turned themselves in just days after the refuge takeover started. A few days later, with no signs showing the group was going to leave, Bundy met with Harney County Sheriff David Ward after schools were closed for safety concerns.
It's time to get the schools open, let your community get back to living. We do not pose a threat.
And that's what I'm asking for.
But that can be done without us leaving.
Despite that plea from the sheriff and those living nearby, Bundy declined an escort out of the state. Then, 1 week into the standoff,
Back up. Back up. You guys won't be allowed to come anywhere closer.
more men arrived, heavily armed, pushing journalists away.
And this is how we will do things when we're in town here.
Bundy would later kick those men out of the refuge. They later went to the Burns airport, meeting face-to-face with the FBI and a list of demands.
You understand that from our perspective, too, you can't walk up and tell us how we're going to do this.
No.
You understand? I agree, it has to be a mutual thing.
In the second week, community members came together at the high school with mixed opinions.
I personally want to say thank you to the Bundys for having the courage to do what they've done. I too agree that it's time for them to go home.
That night, Sheriff Ward said members of the militia had been harassing locals. And just last week, Bundy himself met with the FBI and was driving around town, confident in what he had been doing. Tonight, he is in FBI custody.
The majority of the people are in support of us.
And Bundy and the others who were arrested, they all face felony conspiracy charges through use of force, intimidation, and threats. This investigation, however, certainly is not over.